Warning: Josh is not an expert in any of the crap he talks about. He simply uses his head and does a lot of research so you, the audience, don't have to. Keep in mind, he doesn't know everything, so take the he says with a grain of salt. What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast that'll change the world. I'm your host, Mr. Quarantino, and on here, we actually have a very special guest today. I have here with me Lake Havasu City Councilman, Mr. David.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. I really do appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Anytime we can get out and let the citizens know what's going on in Lake Havasu, it's a good day.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So to go ahead and get it started off, the first question I actually wanted to ask is, because growing up is kind of like a common Joe, for example, and then just like average people around, not many people really know entirely like the role of a councilman. So maybe see if like you want to explain the role of it and then kind of like what are the main functions are.
Sure. You know, most people, the only introduction they have is when they take civics in high school.
Yeah.
And then from then on, they really don't have any idea of what happens as far as the government goes, other than what they see on the news.
Yeah.
In the news nowadays, you really don't want to listen to the politics anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know, the government that's closest to the people is the one that's most responsive to the people. And, of course, the closest government to the people is your city council.
Yeah. Be the local government, right?
Local government. So in like Lake Havasu City, where we're at, we have a city manager / mayor council type of government, which means that the city council, the mayor, including the mayor, there's 6 council members and the mayor, so there's 7 of us.
Okay.
We have 3 employees. We hire the city manager, the city attorney, and the city magistrate or the judge. So the city manager is who actually runs the day-to-day organization of the city of Lake Havasu.
Oh, okay.
It's his responsibility to make sure that everything that's going on in the city is exactly the way that the people of Lake Havasu and your elected officials want it to be.
Right.
So he is responsible for hiring the chief of police, who is then responsible for hiring all the police officers in the city. The city manager hires the fire chief, and then the fire chief hires all of the fire department personnel. City manager hires the public works department, and then he hires all the people that are needed in water and wastewater and all of that. The city manager hires Parks and Recreation director.
Yeah.
He hires the HR director. So all the different organizations that you see, planning and zoning and all those kinds of things, are all actually run by the city manager.
Okay.
The difference will be the city attorney's office, who has the job twofold. One is they are our legal representation in the city.
Right.
So anything that's where we need legal advice, that's what our city attorney's office does. Well, they also have another side, which is the prosecuting side. That was easy for me to say, and I was a policeman. So they prosecute misdemeanors that occur in the city of Lake Havasu.
Okay.
So if it's a felony, it gets kicked up to the county attorney's office. But the misdemeanors that occur within the city limits of Lake Havasu City are prosecuted by our city attorney's office. And then the council and the mayor also hire our magistrate or our judge, and he runs our court system. Okay. So like for right now, you hear, if you watch the news, we're building a courthouse. Oh. So for the last, Lake Havasu is 50 years old. When you look at the last 50 years, we have leased space and shared space through consolidated courts at our county courthouse. And the county owns that building. The county runs that building, and we lease space from them.
Oh, okay.
Right now, we lease 1 courtroom, and we need more courtrooms than that. And the county deconsolidated with the city, so we no longer have a consolidated court, but we still lease their space. So it's kind of like we got divorced, but we still live in the same house.
Oh, okay.
And they want us to move out.
And now you're in the process of building your own.
So we had to come up with our own. We did some work on it. It looked like it was probably going to cost us about $7 million to build a courthouse. It's expensive to build buildings, right? And you have to remember, when the government's involved, everything has to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Everything has to be ADA compliant. The public has to be able to access the different locations that they need to. And a courthouse, of course, has its own special needs, right? Because you have people that are charged with a crime that are going to be there, and you need jury deliberation rooms, those kinds of things.
Right.
So we had the land available right here. We're in City Hall right now. We had the right next to the police department. We had the land available where we could build. And while we were looking at that, there was a building right next door that came up for sale.
Oh, really?
And so we looked at buying that building. It was going to cost $5 million. We didn't think it was really worth that, but another bidder outbid us and got that building.
Oh, wow.
But the building right next door to that, when those people found out that we were interested in looking at a building and they were getting ready to close their business, they were able to sell us the building. So we got the building for $3 million.
Oh, wow.
So now we have to do some tenant improvements and that kind of stuff. But we'll be saving the taxpayers millions of dollars. We'll have a courthouse that's right here adjacent to City Hall. And we're doing it, I don't want to say on the cheap, but a lot less expensive than building from the ground up.
Yeah.
So those are the responsibilities that we have as far as personnel goes. And then what the council does is we establish policy.
Okay.
We set the budget. The city manager comes to us with the budget. He works with his entire staff, and we have an outstanding staff here. And they put together what they think the fiscal needs are going to be for the next year.
Okay.
And that comes to the council, and then we set the budget based on their recommendations and the amount of money that we have that's coming in. So if you watch the news at all, you see that last month we actually ratified our budget. Actually, it was June. We're into August now. It's going so fast.
Yeah.
In June, we ratified our budget for this next year, and we are not raising taxes. We're not borrowing any money, and we've balanced our budget,
Nice.
which is very, to me, important. I'm very conservative when it comes to our fiscal needs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, needs versus wants. Wants are always nice, but when you're using taxpayer dollars, it comes down to needs.
Yeah.
So, and if we have extra money to handle wants, well, then we need to give it back to the taxpayers and not spend it. So,
Yeah.
we need to run a tight ship, and we do here. So I'm very pleased with that. So that's basically what we do. We set policy, we set the budgets, and then we let the city staff do the job that they're required to do to run the city.
Right.
And then, of course, we are the liaison between the citizenry and the staff. So when people have issues and they're not happy with the way things are going, or they just don't know who to call, they'll call one of us,
Okay.
which is fine. That's what I was elected to do. My cell phone number, you called me on my cell phone. Unfortunately, I was in an area that I didn't have cell service. I was on vacation, but my cell phone number was published in the paper this morning. It's in the paper every Sunday. It's on the city website. It's on my business cards, because being elected here in Lake Havasu, if the people can't tell me what they need or what they want, if they can't get a hold of me. So
Yeah.
it's very important for me. So
Okay.
that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of what we do.
Okay. That's very interesting, because I do a lot of my own self-education, and because politics, government, and everything, as well as entire like history, like what we were talking about before, a lot of that really interests me. And so on my off time, I was actually studying American government. And it was talking about like the functionings on local level, then state, federal. And so it's very interesting to hear a lot of those same things in regards to like the functions of the councilman, the mitigation of tasks like the city manager, as well as municipal courts and things like that. So it's very interesting.
Sure. And then something to remember too is when you get into the state, even county level, state level, federal level, you have a lot of partisan politics, where you have a party that you belong to. We all have our own personal preferences and the parties that we belong to. But in Lake Havasu, we don't have districts, and we're not party centric.
Okay.
We actually represent all the people of Lake Havasu, so we are nonpartisan positions. So today, I may be helping somebody who identifies as a Republican. This afternoon, it could be a Democrat,
Right.
or an independent, or a Green Party, or somebody that doesn't want to be affiliated with a political subdivision at all.
Right.
We represent all the people of the city at all times.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, because it's like, especially nowadays, you're seeing a greater issue of partisanship and the inability to compromise between the two differing sides. So especially for like a small town like this, that's a very good thing because it's able to actually show, like based off of seeing everything going on, like how news is going, everything like that. That shows a lot more personal connection without so much like or I want to say subliminal, but like double thinking, maybe something behind the lines, things like that. So that's really good because you're not having to constantly go through the conflict itself of going through an argument in order to get the goals done.
Sure. And you have to listen to both sides.
Exactly.
So when you aren't willing to listen to the other person, you can't come to a compromise. Mm-hmm. It takes an argument to have a solution. If we all thought the same way, or we all had all the solutions, we would just be following each other around.
Yeah.
And that's not what this country's about. It's about different ideas and different ways of doing things. And you have to be willing to listen to both sides. Mm-hmm. You can't really enjoy the sunshine we have here if we don't have rain once in a while. You know what I mean? You can't really enjoy how much sunshine we have unless you just have a torrential downpour, or the life that we have. If you don't have to experience death once in a while, you don't really appreciate the life that has been given to us.
Yeah.
Not everybody's wrong all the time, and not everybody's right all the time.
Yeah, it's always kind of that gray area where you got to have the conversation.
You have to have the conversation. Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yeah. And that was something that the ASU professor that I interviewed, we talked a lot about just the whole issue with partisanship that's going on, and then just the importance of having constructive conversation. Because my biggest advocacy for my podcast is the ability to have that conversation, regardless of what the issue is. It's in order to actually find the solution, you got to be able to have the conversation in order to figure out. And then if you try to eliminate any conversation around it, then how can you actually find a solution? And especially, too, if you're completely isolating one side and not actually looking at things.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. And it was something that I always think about that I refer back to the American government textbook that I read is, let's see, a failing democracy occurs when we have the inability to have proper and productive conversation without a type of government or societal force imposing or oppressing our thought and way of life.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's supposed to be we the people telling the government what to do.
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
Exactly. And it was funny too, because like the textbook, it was breaking down, especially when it was discussing the position of presidency. It was talking about how the founding fathers, John Hancock, Thomas Jefferson, and all of them of the like, when they initially created the executive branch for presidency, they didn't create it with the intent of the president having this much authority and power. Because it was mostly supposed to rely in regards to Congress and what their functions and roles are. But then as like time goes on, you saw the public opinion shift where it's not a question of whether or not they have the authority, but what they're going to do about it.
Sure. We have 3 branches of government for a reason.
Yeah.
If you disagree with one, that gives you 2 others.
Exactly. The checks and balances.
Checks and balances. Absolutely.
Nice. Okay. And then, so what made you want to be a councilman?
Oh gosh. Well, for one, I hate politics. I am not a political person. No, I retired. Gosh, it's been almost 9 years since I retired. And I love this community. And about 5 years ago, gosh, no, I've been in office for 5 years. So anyway, way back 2015, 2014, actually, there was an election here in town. And there was a lot of mudslinging. There was a lot of negativity. A lot of people, I don't know if you recall that or not, but it was, it wasn't good for the city. When people are looking at bringing their business to a community, they look at things like that. And, is this a community or is it a city divided? And I really wasn't happy with all the mudslinging and the negative connotations that were being thrown about and that kind of stuff. And I was reading the paper and lamenting to my wife and said, this is crazy. Somebody needs to do something to fix this.
Yeah.
My wife looked at me and said, well, I really don't see you doing anything. And I said, you're right. and I've always been the type of person that does. I don't sit back and let somebody else have to take care of the problem. If I see a problem, I try to take care of it myself.
Yeah.
So I thought, you're right. I think I will. So I started coming to city council meetings, and I started attending the budget retreats, and I started attending all the things that are open to the public.
Mhm.
For the city. I never talked to anybody. I never spoke. I just sat in the back of the room and wondered, what was going on, and learning exactly what's happening in the city. And what I found was there's actually good things happening in the city. And
Oh, really?
all it takes is some people to really want to be involved to make it happen and bring it to fruition, and not let the naysayers take over.
Yeah.
The people whose glass is always half empty.
Yeah.
My glass is always 3/4 full. So it's I'm a very lucky person. So when it comes to life, and so I decided that I did it for a while, and then I thought, okay, I want to run for office, and so I contacted. Then he was in the legislature. He had been a city council member, Sonny Borelli.
Okay.
He's now our state senator. I had contact with Sonny just in a roundabout way. His girlfriend used to work for me.
Oh, really?
She was my public information officer, so I knew Sonny through her. And so I contacted Sonny and said, "Hey, I'm thinking of running for office, but I'm not sure how to get started, and nobody knows me." So it just so happens that the next day they were the city here does a thing called coffee with the city mayor, or the city manager and the mayor.
Yeah.
And at that time, the mayor was Mark Nixon and the city manager was Charlie Cassens. And
Okay.
so I went to the coffee. Sonny was there, and he introduced me to them. And I told him I was thinking about running for office and just wasn't sure where to go and what to do. And so they said, "Well, here's the brief rundown, but let's talk at another time." So I came into the office and I had interviews with both of them on what their positions were and how they felt about the city and that kind of stuff and what they did. And then it just went from there. And then I continued on. And the biggest challenge that I thought I would have was when I decided to run for office, nobody knew me.
Yeah.
I worked for the California Highway Patrol for 30 years. I was the commander of the office over in Needles. But we lived here in Lake Havasu.
Yeah.
So we thoroughly enjoyed living in Lake Havasu. And so when the time came to make a decision on where my career was going to go, we decided to retire and stay here in Lake Havasu. So I retired. And so the only people that really knew me in Havasu were the officers from the Highway Patrol office in Needles.
Yeah.
That had met me a time or two. I knew Chief Doyle. I had met him. He's our police chief here in Lake Havasu. I had met him through the Chiefs Association when I was the commander in Needles. But other than that, people here in town, my neighbors knew who I was and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But most people didn't know me. So I went out and started knocking door to door.
Oh, yeah. Do the door-to-door canvassing.
I did. And I walked and I knocked and I talked to people and I said, "Hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. And what do you think the issues are?" And so long story short, it went on and I continued to come to the meetings, and then the primary election came along and I was elected in the primary.
Nice.
So I continued on, and then I served my first term. One of the things I said was, this is small town stuff. We don't need to be spending a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
So I didn't take any campaign contributions from anyone.
Oh, really?
I refused to accept. And I had people say, "Oh, they want to write me a check or give me some money." I said, "Nope, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of money." So I spent $2,400.
Oh, wow.
And I spent all that money locally. I had a local person here develop a website for me. I made a Facebook page and I did that myself. I bought all my campaign materials from our couple different printing companies here in town.
Oh, wow.
So all my signs, all my cards, all my stuff were all printed through the different companies here. I spread it around to different companies here in Lake Havasu.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, we'll see what happens. And then after I got elected, I saved all that. Because I said, well, we'll see what happens when this term is up and if I'm going to run again.
Yeah.
So I did that first term. And then last year, I ran again. I decided to run for a second term. And on that election, I spent a total of $67.
Wow.
I used all my campaign materials from the time before. Once again, I did not accept any campaign contributions. And I was elected again in the primary.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really awesome because, like, me studying a lot of the stuff on politics and everything, typically campaign contributions is one of the biggest key factors, and to try to be able to get elected without that is always been more of an extreme challenge than with things like that.
Sure.
And I like that the idea because it seems like it's like you feel like you have the capacity to make a change, and you're seeking to capitalize and actually do so.
Correct. I've never worked in Lake Havasu. I haven't held a job here. I haven't owned a business here. I'm strictly here for the people of Lake Havasu. And so I have no agenda of my own other than I have kids and grandkids here. I want this to be a wonderful city for my kids and grandkids to grow up in.
Yeah, exactly. And by especially keeping everything local too, that shows the interest and the intent to really do good by the people here and everything.
It's very important to me to keep everything local.
Yeah.
Costs me a little bit more. It does. Because there's things that you can do on the internet that can be cheaper.
Yeah.
But I felt it was important to stay local.
Yeah. And it doesn't hold that same value too, especially doing the door-to-door canvassing, really introduce yourself to the community and mitigate yourself in it.
I still have people, sometimes they'll see me in the grocery store and they'll say, hey, I voted for you. I'm like, thank you. And they say, do you remember me? And I'm like, oh, not really. It's like, you knocked on my door like 6 years ago. Like, it's very good to see you and thank you for your support.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That is. Okay, and so let's see here. So moving on to the next question. This one I wanted to get more into like your background because you formerly served as a military police officer. Is that right?
That is correct. I spent 4.5 years in the United States Air Force, and long story short, I was 15 years old. I was living in Northern California where I grew up.
Yeah.
And out riding my bicycle like I did every day. And I was a paper boy.
Oh, okay.
I delivered the paper every day. And so I read the paper. I've always read the paper since I was a kid. And so anyway, long story short, I had read about a armed robbery that had occurred in town.
Oh, really?
And I just happened to be riding my bicycle past that same place, and I saw something that looked really suspicious. And sure as heck, they were being robbed again.
Wow.
And so I followed the guy, got a description of him, got a description of his vehicle, went back to the location, and asked the girl, "Did you just get robbed?" She's crying. She's on the phone. She's like, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "Okay." Just then I hear the screeching. I look up, and there's a California Highway Patrol car, and it's in a broadside skid, and it is flying into the parking lot. And the guy jumps out of the patrol car, and he's got a gun about this big, and he comes running into the store. He goes, I said, "Hey, the guy that robbed the place, he just went up that way. That's here's the description." Jumps in his car, and he takes off.
Oh, wow. So you got your own little investigation going.
So he takes off after the guy, and a couple minutes later, the local police show up, and then the detectives show up, and they take me down to the police station. And about an hour later, the guy that robbed the place got caught by another highway patrolman quite a ways away in another county, and based off the description that I had given. So I went to court, did all that, and I was just enchanted. And the highway patrolmen that were involved in that case they just impressed me.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. I want to be a California Highway Patrolman. And this was like 1974, 75-ish. Okay. And so after high school, I joined the United States Air Force, and I signed up to be a military policeman. They call it security police at that time in the Air Force, and now it's called security forces, but in those days it was called security police. So I could be a police officer in the Air Force and start to build up my background so I could get on the highway patrol. And after 4 years, my term of enlistment was up, but the Highway Patrol wasn't testing at that time.
Yeah.
So I had extended my active duty time for another 6 months. And during that 6-month period, there was a test for the Highway Patrol. So I tested, and then when my 6 months was up, that's why I have 4 years and 6 months instead of just 4 years.
Yeah.
And so I tested for the Highway Patrol, and lo and behold, they hired me. And
awesome.
They must have made a mistake somewhere.
Somewhere along the line.
Somewhere along the line. So, so I became a California Highway Patrolman. I worked in Northern California, and I had a really, really cool career. I got to do some really neat stuff, and worked my way up, and eventually it culminated 30 years later as the commander of the office out here in Needles.
That's awesome. What kind of stories do you have from it?
Oh gosh, yeah,
some pretty crazy ones.
Yeah. What kind of stuff can you talk about? So I over the years I got to run some different programs and be involved in some different things. One of the things that I did was dignitary protection.
Okay.
So what that means is whenever somebody like the president, vice president, heads of state would come to our region, I would run the motorcades.
Okay.
And I started as an officer working on the motorcades, and then when I became a sergeant, I started putting the motorcades, and then when I promoted to lieutenant, I ran the motorcades. But as a sergeant, one of the things I got to do is Gerald Ford, President of the United States,
really?
Was he lived in the Palm Springs area, and when he passed away, I had written the operations plan for the motorcade for his funeral.
Oh, really? Wow.
So, in fact, I have some really nice memorabilia. If we ever have another podcast, maybe we'll do it in my home office. And I have some really nice memorabilia from the United States Secret Service.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Where I've done some work and a thing from Gerald Ford's estate for the motorcade that we ran while his funeral services were here in Southern California. So I did that. I've met every president since Ronald Reagan.
Really?
So,
oh, wow.
So working the motorcades, they always say thank you and that kind of stuff. And probably the most down-to-earth person that I actually got to shake hands with and was George Bush. And
really?
Yeah, he and Barbara Bush came to the Annenberg Estate in the Palm Springs area, and it was a motorcade that I ran for them, and met him at the airport. And he actually took the time to walk away from everybody and walked over and shook my hand and said, "Hey, Sarge, appreciate you being here."
Oh, wow,
and,
that's awesome.
So, I have a soft spot in my heart for the Bushes. They're very, very nice people.
That's awesome.
So,
did you ever get a chance to meet Bush Sr. at all?
That was Bush Sr.
Oh, Bush Sr., okay.
Yeah, that was Bush Sr., him and Barbara, but I also, Bush, was 42. I always get their numbers mixed up.
Yeah.
So, but the son as well. Got to meet him as well. And,
that's really cool.
Oh yeah, all of them. So I was actually with the Secret Service when they found out that President Obama was going to be the Democratic nominee that year, and that starting that day that he was going to start getting full protection. Because they don't get full protection unless they are a candidate for the presidency, and they have to get that nomination. So
yeah.
I got to do a lot of stuff there. The Highway Patrol sent me away for 3 years to the Drug Enforcement Administration, and I worked with the DEA for 3 years working narcotics cases. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Seeing all the different things that go on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, believe it or not, I had long hair and a ponytail, and I was real thin. I looked like I was a meth user. But then, let's see, I ran our background unit, doing background investigations for hiring new officers. I was a sergeant in Central LA during 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And we thought we were going to get hit next. So I actually went home, got my fifth wheel RV, took it to the Central Los Angeles office, and I did not leave that office for a couple months.
Oh, just in case if the attack was to happen.
I ended up, because working, I ended up working 16-hour shifts and sleeping in the parking lot for a couple months, just
Wow.
because we were that concerned that Los Angeles was going to be a target, and not knowing exactly what was happening. So, I got through that. I was when we had the riots in '92 in Los Angeles. I was working in Riverside at the time, and I was out there for the riots. And
Wow.
yeah, that was interesting. That was 5 days, and it was one of those things that we got packaged up when the riot first started, and put in squads and sent out to Los Angeles with the clothes on our back, and I didn't come home for 5 days. So
wow.
yeah, it was. Our families were able to package up some clothes for us, but by the time they got to us, it was we got our new clothes, you could say, from our families that sent us our dry cleaning and clean socks and skivvies and all that. And
Wow.
on day 4,
Wow.
I was washing my socks and everything in the shower, and then but so that was interesting. Yeah, it's. I had a very interesting career. Got to do a lot of things. As an officer, a sergeant, and a lieutenant, I ran what at that time was called the Officer Involved Shooting Team. Now it's called Critical Incident. But anytime there was a use of force that resulted in serious bodily injury or death, or an officer killed in the line of duty, I did the investigation on those.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So, yeah, a very, very varied career, a very interesting career.
That is, and you had the opportunity to meet so many presidents, so many different people, and you got to work with the Secret Service. That's honestly really amazing.
Yeah, I worked with the Secret Service. I worked with the Drug Enforcement Administration, and I traveled all over the country doing stuff. And yeah, I had, like I said, a very interesting career.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. And then, so a question I wanted to ask you as well, and this is because one of my old coworkers and a friend of mine, he was also a military police officer for the Army, and I asked him for a little help, like any questions in mind that he would ask. And one thing that he asked that piqued my interest was, how did you approach the oath you took when you first enlisted into military officer? Because he was explaining that like some people will carry it on throughout the rest of their lives, or like handle it different ways, person to person.
That oath I have taken numerous times. So we'll just start with when I first enlisted. I was still in school when I enlisted. I went into the delayed enlistment program. Okay. And so you go through everything, and you take the oath. And I took it very serious. And then when I went on active duty, you have to take the oath again.
Yeah.
And then when I came on the Highway Patrol, you take the oath again. Because you are upholding the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah, and protecting the people.
And protecting the people. And then when I was elected to office, I took the oath again. And then when I was reelected to office, I took the oath again.
Wow.
So yeah, my whole life has been dedicated to public service. When you think about it, I went in the military right after high school. And then I went from the military to the Highway Patrol. Went from the Highway Patrol to being an elected official. So my whole life has been dedicated to public service.
Yeah.
And so I take my oath of office extremely serious. And there are people that have questioned that over the years, especially during the pandemic. Which I take that personally, because just because you don't agree with my decisions doesn't mean that I'm not upholding the Constitution the United States as set forth by the Supreme Court and the 3 branches of government.
Right.
So I truly believe that I have done true faith and allegiance to the best of my ability my entire life.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I know it's because like you were saying that people will question you, and so they put in a situation a lot of times where it's more of a subjective opinion without so much actual insight into everything. But that's very interesting with it, with having to take the oath over and over again. And especially, I know the pandemic as well has been a very difficult thing just over in general with being able to uphold the standards, as well as just all the conflicts that keep coming up. So that's really cool to see. And then, yeah, it's like something with me personally, especially just because how people are nowadays, like everything is more quick to being like attack journalism, things like that. Like as we were talking about before, there's more mudslinging. There's people are more interested in like dogging on each other, finding the negatives instead of like the things that you're doing, for example, where it's more so in the actual intentions of benefiting the public interest the most, and it's not dealing so much with your own personal vices and conflicts and how that could interfere with the duties and the oath you took. Instead, you stayed true to yourself and your values and traditions and upheld at the best of your ability what you found to be true.
Very true. And it's extremely important to remember that it's easy to make a decision when that decision has no consequences.
Yeah.
You know, people can sit back and they can say, well, I would do it this way, or I would do it that way. Every decision that I've made for all these different careers that I've had, you have to look at it, okay, the decision that I'm making is going to impact another person or several people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very important decision. And what's right for one person isn't always right for another person.
Right.
And so you have to take the community as a whole and say, what is the appropriate action to take for the community as a whole? Not for one person, not for myself, not for you,
mm-hmm.
but for the community and well-being as the whole community. So, it's easy to sit back and criticize.
Yeah.
But if you really want to make those decisions, please. Now, this is my last term. I'm a big believer in term limits.
Yeah.
So this is my second term. When this is over, I will be leaving this seat. So if people really, truly believe that their ideas are better, please run for office and make those decisions.
Yeah, especially too if you feel like you have the capacity to make a genuine change, especially for the better. Like for myself, for example, I feel like I have a capacity to extend to help benefit people and through having the productive conversation. And it at times almost feels irresponsible to not capitalize on that when you feel like you have the capacity to do so.
Sure.
But yeah,
this is communication.
Exactly.
And this is, who knows how many people are going to watch. If one person watches and it changes their life, then it was worth everything that you did. So it's extremely important to have communication and be able to put the information out there for people to see it and to make life decisions.
Exactly. And then it'll be, because the people themselves will also have their own independent thinking. It'll be their choice to either disseminate and take in the information as it is or do their own investigation to figure out what the actual legitimacy of it.
Because this is America, and that's how we do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We don't have to sit back and wait for the government to tell us what to think.
Yeah.
We can think for ourselves.
That's why I've always been such a big history buff, especially when it comes to America, because like the stuff that I read, the biggest emphasis has always been the question of whether or not the government has the authority to enact or do certain things. And it was discussing, statistically speaking, America versus any other nation like Britain, France, anything of that like. There's never been such a public focus and public interest on personal liberties and freedoms like any other. That's something that is primarily acute to America alone.
Oh, absolutely. And it's extremely important that we can make those types of things, those types of decisions, and the government only has the authority that the people give it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we forget that. And this cracks people up. But I'll show you. This is the stuff that I carry everywhere. So, yeah, old pictures from when I worked on patrol and that kind of stuff. But I carry this all the time.
Oh, a little Constitution handbook?
Yep.
I actually carry this too.
I carry a copy of the Constitution of the United States with me all the time. So,
Nice.
Because it's important. That is what all the laws of this country are based on, is this Constitution right here.
Yeah, that's why I actually...
This is what our government officials and our elected officials are supposed to remember.
Yeah, that's why I bought two handbooks. I have one in my car and then one at home. And then I have specific sections highlighted for references. So that way it kind of keeps that in mind for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow, that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Ooh, so a question. This this talking point I feel is especially acute to Havasu, and it's in regards to recreational marijuana, since that's now a thriving and growing industry, especially here. I know with there's always the steadfast to like become, I'm trying to find the right word for it, but the more. So I'm having brain fire. I'm trying to find the right word for it.
Happens.
Yeah. There's more caution in the wind, I would say, in regards to orientating a lot of new laws or a lot more things and policies in regards to recreational use. Because I know, like, for example, obviously there's still the caution of it being like a gateway drug, things like that. And then it's just like overall trying to handle it as a community whole without it causing too many issues and everything.
So, yeah, I may have a different perspective on it coming from a law enforcement background and working in narcotics. So first off, we'll just start with it's legal in Arizona now.
Yeah.
So whether we agree with it or we disagree with it, it's legal by state law. Still not legal by federal law, but it's legal by state law. It being a gateway drug. The vast majority, and this is my personal David Lane's opinion, but it's a gateway drug, and that will become less and less as time goes on. The reason it's a gateway drug is because people are buying marijuana from the same people that they buy their cocaine and their heroin and their hash and everything else from.
Yeah.
If you're buying marijuana from a local dispensary, that's all they're selling.
Yeah.
They're not selling those other drugs, so it won't necessarily become a gateway.
Okay.
It's like alcohol. Well, you can say alcohol is a gateway drug as well.
Yeah.
They're both things that dull the senses. Myself personally, I don't drink or smoke.
Yeah.
So neither one of them would be a gateway for me. I believe that marijuana has a valid medical reason, or it helps people, cancer patients and that kind of stuff. So I think it's good for medical reasons. With that said, I always said that because when we had medical marijuana, it shouldn't be through dispensaries that are owned by different people. Well, that's all they put out there. It should go through a pharmacy. So if you needed marijuana for your cancer or whatever it is,
or if it's like Parkinson's,
yes, you should get that from the pharmacy, not from your local dispensary. But because of federal law, that's the reason that came about. Okay. So we recently had a zoning issue here in Lake Havasu on rezoning a piece of property because the property owner wanted to try and obtain a license and sell marijuana from that particular location.
Right.
I voted against it, but I wasn't voting against it because I'm against the marijuana. If somebody wants to sit at home and smoke marijuana, I don't care.
Yeah.
That's their house. They can do whatever they want. I would prefer that they didn't do it in public. I'm a very strong advocate for not driving after using any type of substance.
Right.
I've seen what happens, and I can tell you I've put a lot of people in jail for driving under the influence. Some of them have killed other people, and their lives are destroyed. And there's one thing that they all had in common. They all thought they were okay, and they never planned on killing anybody. Yeah. But they did. And in some circumstances, they killed their own children. Oof. So I truly, those are the stories I don't talk about. Yeah. I truly believe that if you want to, I don't care, but keep it at home and don't take it out in the public. Yeah. Same with alcohol.
Yeah, like you don't want to go walking down the street throwing back alcohol or anything like that because you'll get in trouble for it.
Right, and marijuana, if you are walking behind somebody that's smoking a joint, you can get a contact high. Mm-hmm. So nobody wants to see it. I don't walk behind people that are smoking cigarettes either. But like I said, if they want to do it at home, I don't care. The biggest issues I also have, we'll go back to the rezoning. The reason I voted against it is because of one, it had a drive-through component to it. Two, it's right next to where our swap meet is at. And it was right next to the gate where people go in and out of our state park when we have the balloon festival, the boat shows, those kinds of things. Okay. And people are walking with their children. And I didn't think that was the right location for a business that is selling a substance to alter your mind state. So
Yeah.
I would have voted no if it was a liquor store.
Yeah, because I know there are certain zoning policies where like you can't open up a bar or anything that's within a certain zoning distance of like something that a business that's associated with childcare, things like that.
Correct. And it's the same thing with the marijuana.
Yeah.
So that's why I have voted no. But the people don't have a license anyway, so it may never even come to fruition. Who knows?
Yeah.
The other issue I have with legalized marijuana is the edibles. So you'll hear a lot of the advocates for marijuana say, nobody can die from smoking too much marijuana.
Right.
You're just going to go to sleep first. And, they'll wake up and they'll still be groggy, but whatever. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. If that's the only way you're taking it is by smoking it.
Right.
If you look at the states where marijuana has been legalized and the overdoses in children of THC overdoses, because, gummy bears.
Right.
Gummy bears are candy that are marketed to children, but they're putting THC in gummy bears.
Yeah.
And a dose of marijuana for a gummy bear is one gummy bear. Have you ever seen a child eat one gummy bear?
Not at all.
They're going to eat a whole handful of gummy bears, as many as they can stuff in their mouth. And so they're the ones that are ODing on THC.
Wow.
The cookies. You buy a cookie. 1/6 of a cookie is a dose of THC. Have you ever seen a kid only eat 1/6 of a cookie?
Yeah, no, they just go for it all.
They'll eat as many cookies as they can cram in their mouth.
Yeah.
The candy bars, that sound like the same names as real candy bars. That's where I have the issue. They should take the edibles and they should make it so that they are not marketed the same way that we market candy to children.
Be identifiable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So those are the issues I have with marijuana. Not anything other than if it's better if you're not buying it from your local drug dealer.
Yeah.
It's better if you can go into the store and buy it, and there is legitimate reasons for it. If you want to smoke it at home, I don't care. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
And it's not the same marijuana that we had when, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. It's not the same marijuana we had back then.
Yeah, especially being Cali as well.
That was, I grew up in Northern California. Humboldt was the best. Not that I would know. But it had very small, anywhere from 4 to 8% THC, where nowadays the THC content, if you get the real heavy hybrid stuff, you get 80, 90% THC content.
Yeah.
It's a lot different. So it's not your grandma's marijuana.
Yeah. And that's a conversation I've had with a few people as well, because I know it's marijuana still having like some of the stigmas and everything as well. So having the conversation around it especially helps, and including like that for example is like the semantics of the in between. It's not so much disagreeing with the marijuana itself, but just like the handlings and stuff done with it. Yeah,
it's the marketing, and so there are legitimate purposes for it.
Yeah.
I'm not against marijuana. I'm not against alcohol. It's a personal choice.
Right.
As I said, I don't think that it needs to be out on the street.
Yeah.
And, in this town, and the way the marijuana laws are, the only legal place to actually smoke marijuana is in your own home.
Yeah.
So if you're a tourist traveling to Arizona from a state where it's not legal, you still can't smoke the marijuana, because where are you going to smoke it? You can't smoke it in your hotel room. All the hotel rooms are non-smoking hotel rooms.
Yeah.
You can't smoke it outside. It's illegal. You can't smoke it in your car. It's illegal. So it's not something that would be marketed to tourists. So it's another reason I didn't want it in our tourist area.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely understandable. And so I definitely have, I would say, a bit of a unique perspective on recreational marijuana, as well as based on like personal experience as well. Because like, for example, I've had multiple family members that have gone through traumatic like car accidents, things like that, and they've been have no choice but to be dependent on like opioids, oxycodone, stuff like that for several years, versus like medical marijuana being a healthy alternative now. And then like with for me as well, because I've had multiple family members, including just this recent year, who overdosed on prescription medication, methamphetamine, stuff like that.
It's just as bad as your local heroin dealer.
Yeah. And so I like the idea of recreational marijuana, especially responsible usage around it. Like, for example, how like all the commercials and everything that we see in regards to smoking cigarettes, alcohol, stuff like that, that is almost a counterbalance to in regards to just like the public interest, but in order to acknowledge the negative effects and to make sure that information is presented, I think that would be a good idea with marijuana as well. Like, especially since for recreational users, they're paying a higher tax rate, which is compensating for additional economic benefits here. And like my own personal thought is that could even be used as a way to like radio ads, TV ads, things like that, to kind of help promote the like things you were saying right there and everything in regards to more responsible usage and things like that.
Well, that's a whole nother health issue.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we've now shown over the years that vaping is bad for your lungs.
Yeah, because the moisture.
Sure. And, you know, they're growing mold in their lungs. And when you're smoking marijuana, you're putting smoke into your lungs. Our lungs were made to breathe oxygen and give out carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Right. So anything that you put into your system like that is not good for your lungs.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother issue that people need to have that discussion with their doctors.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like the mask thing with the pandemic. You know, people would ask me, well, what do you think about the mask? I'm an elected official. I'm not a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's right for one person is not right for another person.
Right.
That conversation is something that each and every person needs to have with their primary care provider. Do I get vaccinated? Do I not get vaccinated? It's not the government's position to tell you that. That's your doctor.
Yeah.
And you should be having that conversation with your primary care physician, not a TV doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
And not a government doctor, but your doctor who knows your particular medical situation.
Yeah, as well as your own personal intentions and you as an individual versus getting peer pressured into things like that. Because it's slightly unfortunate, but nowadays, especially in regard to like stuff like that, I see a lot more peer pressure coming from things like that and the condemnation that comes with it versus instead of just generalizing, have the actual conversation with your doctor, consultant. Because like there's, for example, like elderly groups as well as people with underlying health conditions are going to be a lot more susceptible and at greater risk, and that's where more things will apply. But then like versus the younger groups, like kids, young adults, stuff like that, there's not as much severity and things like that. Of course, as you said, it varies person to person.
It varies person to person. Everybody's health is different.
Mm-hmm.
So the person that you talk with is your primary care provider. So whether it's what's right for me is wrong for you, what's wrong for you is right for me.
Yeah.
And it's nobody else's business.
Exactly.
You know, so we all have to be responsible for our own well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So take masks, for example. If a mask makes you feel comfortable, then you should by all means wear it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't make you feel comfortable and you don't think you need it, then don't.
Mm-hmm.
This is America.
Yeah, that's
you make your decision.
the beauty of individual liberty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's why that's why I especially like U.S. history, because the greater push and emphasis on individual liberty and things like that versus many other nations. And I mean, the fact that we're able to have conversation like right now, for example, that's honestly one of the greatest things about America that I love.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So we're a constitutional republic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so the next thing that I want to talk about, that'll actually probably be the last thing, but this is because I've lived here and I went to high school here as well, and being around like the kids my generation and everything in here, and there's always from the younger groups, there's always the distaste of Havasu itself in regards to as much like recreational things to do, because like Havasu has always been more of like a tourist town
Mm-hmm.
where visitors, the people from like Washington, Canada, and things like that come to visit. And based off like all the things that I get told from everybody and like my own group and everything, we see that there's obviously there's the focus on tourists, bring people in, stuff like that. But for like the younger generations in Havasu, we've always kind of expressed the issue of like there's not really anything to do here, like an incentive to stay here in Havasu. And so like my dialogue and my view on that is because I have business economic plans in the future as well, and I would like to establish some means like here in Havasu as well. And my biggest focus would be something that would be able to balance that between appeasing and accommodating like tourists, older generations, but also still providing incentive for the younger generations to stay. Because, like for example, it's if all the younger generations in this town, they don't like and they want to move out, then you're going to start seeing more of the best people leave the city and the worst people stay. And obviously that could like factor all kinds of things, but I would I'm trying to see where I was going with that. But I like the idea of if like putting more acute attention on like the younger generations to provide more incentive for them to want to stay here. So that way we have like the best people here and really build and grow a community.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. That was kind of a long question, but no, that's okay. I because that's one of the things that I hear is there's nothing for kids to do here.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that you hear. And I have kids here and I have grandchildren here. And so there are things for kids to do.
Yeah.
Now, if you're looking to go drop your kid off somewhere and let them, hang out at the mall, there is no place. I mean, the skate park.
Yeah.
But even that, people should always be involved in their children's lives with what's going on. You should never just drop them off somewhere.
Yeah.
But kids have to have that freedom to go out and be kids too.
Yeah.
So, my grandson, he likes to go out to the beach and he likes to go ride jet skis and he likes to go boating and he likes to ride a skateboard and he likes to play basketball. He likes to do all those things just like every other kid does.
Yeah.
So just for example, we do have Sea Scouts here. We have Boy Scouts here. We have the Civil Air Patrol here. Girl Scouts, different organizations like that. One of the things that I do for just for myself is my wife and I both belong to Kiwanis, which is an organization that caters to children.
Oh, okay.
So, and through that we have the Builders Club that we started. Instead of it just being at one school, it's an after school type of thing where they meet once a week and they get involved in the community.
Yeah.
Through the high school we have Key Club.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting. You went to high school here. Do you remember teacher Miss Denny?
Yes.
Remember Laura Denny? Okay, she's still there. She does the Future Business Leaders of America class, and I'm one of her advisors. And
wow.
so I go to her class every so often, and I will speak to the younger kids that are there, the freshmen, and the juniors. But I will talk to the senior class as well, and it's amazing, especially with the seniors. I will ask the question: how many of you plan on getting out of Havasu as soon as you get out of high school? 100%. They put their hand up. 100%. Well, and then I also get to greet the new teachers that are coming into the Lake Havasu School District that have gone on, to college, and they want to be a school teacher in Lake Havasu. One day, last school year, I was sitting at a table, and there was 8 teachers sitting around the table. And so I said, "So where are you all from?" They're all from Havasu.
Wow.
They had all left and then realized, you know what, Havasu is a pretty good place. I can't wait to get back. And they all came back here, and they're teaching at our local schools.
Oh, wow.
So we are a small community.
Yeah.
And when the conversation gets steered towards a certain demographics, and then they start, there's nothing for us to do here. There's nothing for us to do here.
Yeah.
And then you go off to the big city or someplace else, and then you realize, Havasu actually really is a pretty good place. And there are things to do. I just have to find them.
Yeah.
Now, our partnership for economic development, it's called the PED. I don't know if you're familiar with the PED or not. It'd be great for somebody like you. They have what they call a co-work location. Have you heard of that? So James Gray and Amy Spitzer, they're the two over there that are the driving force behind this. And through this co-work location, it is small business owners and entrepreneurs like yourself that they can rent space.
Oh, really?
So, and they have a studio where you would be able to set up, and they feed off of each other.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's all like-minded individuals that are local entrepreneurs. And because not everybody that's building a business is ready to just move into a storefront.
Right.
They're working out of their parents' house or their apartment or whatever. This it's called F106 right now. It's down off of London Bridge Road, and the space number out there is F106. That's how it got its name.
Okay.
But there are photographers, there's computer people, there's all kinds of different people that are working out of that. And it's for young people like yourself that are trying to start a business where they can just rent a small space but have a place to go work, to do their work, and then bounce stuff off of each other. They're now in the process of actually building. It's called Nomadic. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but it's called Nomadic. And it's, do you know where the grassy area is downtown, the downtown park area at Quirio and McCulloch?
Oh, yeah.
And right next to that is Sanchez Hawkins Jewelry Store. Behind the jewelry store, they're building a building back there, and that's where it's going to be.
Oh, wow.
And it'll be a co-work location, and they'll have offices that you can, if you want to rent it for an hour, you can rent it for an hour. If you want to rent it for a week, you can rent it for a week. If you want to rent it for a month, you can rent it for a month. If you want to rent it for a year. And then what it does is it allows you to build your business without having to actually go out and fill out a brick and mortar space that may be beyond your means at that time.
Yeah.
And to help you grow your business. And that is through our Partnership for Economic Development, because one of the things that we've been working on, because exactly what you said, instead of bringing businesses from out of town, people say, oh, we need different businesses here. Let's grow our own. Let's take our young people and grow our own. So that's one of the things we're doing. We are bringing businesses from out of town, and we do have some that are coming in, as you've seen. PMG Manufacturing took over the Kmart building. Robbie Gordon is taking over the old Hastings building.
Okay.
We have different restaurants coming into town. There's a couple other businesses that are looking at buying some property out by the airport, out by the mall, type of stuff. But we're also working on building our local entrepreneurs to help them. They have another group there called Creative Comrades.
Okay.
And it's a camaraderie of people that are mostly artists.
Oh, really?
To get together and work on their different things. And they meet once a month, like at College Street or someplace like that.
Yeah.
And they're entrepreneurs as well, but they're mostly on the artist side.
Wow.
So we are doing things for people that are your generation.
Yeah.
So we have things for the younger generation that are growing up. As far as activities go, adult supervised type activities.
Right.
And now we're working on these different activities for people that are your age to help you grow your businesses here in town. So we are working on it. But if you go to any other city, you're going to see the same issues there that you're going to see here, even though we're a small town. The only difference is there's malls and that kind of stuff. And you have to think about what a municipality does. What is the city's job? We don't build businesses.
Right.
We don't build housing. We just put the people in the same room to help them come together and make something happen. So, workforce housing is huge right now in this town.
Yeah.
People can't afford to live here, and we don't have enough workforce housing for a multitude of reasons that we can get into if you want to, but there's a lot of reasons. But the city doesn't build houses. But what we do know is we know people that have land. We know people that build buildings. We know people that have money. So you put all of them together into a room, and you let them talk about, okay, what can we do to build some workforce housing here and make it be profitable for everybody?
Okay, so kind of like serving as a middleman.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, we're just the catalyst for that because we don't build houses. We don't build businesses. But if we see a need for a business, we can work through our Partnership for Economic Development, and we can get people that want to come here and try to show them the land that we have and what's available, or through, as I said, the co-work location.
Yeah.
Which that co-work location actually came out of Vision 2020. You remember back when Lake Havasu was going through the America's Best Communities competition? This was about 5 years ago through Frontier. And
I think
they started having a lot of town hall meetings and meeting with the public saying, what is it that we need in this town? And one of the things that came up was we need to have something to help grow our local businesses and to help our local entrepreneurs. And the PED is the one that spearheaded that whole competition, and we were given $2 million
Oh wow.
as prize money for the city. And so different dollars went into different parts. And I say we, the city wasn't actually given the money. The Partnership for Economic Development was the one that was actually given the money.
Oh, okay.
The city just helps approve the processes because as a larger organization, we can help with that.
And kind of like regulate, make sure there's like no funny business.
Exactly.
Things like that.
Yeah, that's more of a regulatory type of an agency. But one of the things that came out of that whole thing was the co-work location and the fact that we need to help our local entrepreneurs. So it's out there, and if you're interested in it, James Gray or Amy Spitzer over at the Partnership for Economic Development. They're in the same building as the Chamber of Commerce and Lake Havasu.
Okay. And what was the name of it again?
Partnership for Economic Development. Most people refer to it as the PED. And James would be a great person for you to have on your podcast to talk about local entrepreneurs because he works with a lot of them.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, him or Amy.
Okay, awesome.
James is the one that usually does most of the talking.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, because it's like being the younger generation, I've been having my own incentive to want to like start entrepreneurial stuff here because I like the idea as well of giving the coming generations as well as like people my age already, give them more of an incentive to want to stay here, give back to the community, make sure that it thrives and becomes even better off.
Mm-hmm.
And like just the common thing that I hear from like my age group, like here in Havasu, is like in regards to this not having anything to do, even though there is like the lake and then you got bowling and stuff like that. And of course, once you go through that constant repetition, then it kind of goes, oh, there's nothing to do. But I don't know. I hope that I can have some long-term interest to provide more incentive because, like I said, I like the idea of especially the best people that are in Havasu, provide more of an incentive for them to stay here, to build businesses and a community here, because then everybody's going to really pay off on it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what this whole idea of the shared workspace is to help them to grow. But ultimately, whether a business succeeds or fails is on the business owner.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's stuff to do. It'd be nice to get other businesses. It would be nice to say, we're not a tourist town. We were built as a tourist town.
Yeah.
We will always be a tourist town. And we don't have, it's like, okay, it'd be great if we could bring in a business and bring in 300 jobs. Mm-hmm. We don't have 300 employees for it. And even if we did, we don't have the housing for those. Even our school district right now is having a hard time recruiting teachers because we don't have enough employees.
Oh, wow.
Our hospital is having a hard time recruiting employees. We have a lot of manufacturing here in town. People don't even realize that we have. There's a computer place over on the north side of town that builds motherboards for a lot of computers. And we have, if you ever buy a padlock, like a Schlag or a York or any of those, the keys that come with those, the manufacturers right here in Lake Havasu.
Oh, wow.
And people don't realize that there's a lot of manufacturing here in Lake Havasu. There's a lot of off-road type stuff. There's a lot of boating industry and that kind of thing. What we hear a lot, and I hear from business owners, is trying to find more employees. Yeah. And trying to get that workforce. And we're having that issue right now with all these different businesses that are already here. So if you're a business that's looking at coming here and you look at the workforce, you're like, I'd love to come there, but you don't have enough employees.
Right.
Our previous mayor, Mark Nixon, used to talk about a call center that wanted to come here where they needed 200 employees. And they eventually went somewhere else because we just don't have the workforce.
Wow.
And right now with workforce housing being what it is, it's even more difficult. So we're working on all these different fronts all the time. Mm-hmm. We're working on trying to get workforce housing. We're trying to put all the people in the same room. We work with the Partnership for Economic Development to bring other businesses here. Yeah. We're working with them to build our local entrepreneurs. It's like having a glove with a whole bunch of fingers on it, and you're trying to fill all those fingers, but you can't leave any of them empty, Otherwise the glove doesn't work. So we're working on all those different things.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in too at the same time. Because like when I was reading American Government, I was talking to as well. Like when dealing with things like this, there's always specific things that comes up, whether it's like majority politics or interest groups that spring from it, and then the counterbalancing forces that comes from each of it. But yeah, and then like, would you say with like the having the workforce here, do you think that also pertains to the whole idea of like the younger generation is more interested in leaving Havasu versus staying?
If people are coming here and people are going there, the Great Migration, you're reading history, people move all the time. So how do we keep them here? Well, there has to be a place for them to work. There has to be a place for them to live. There has to be a place for them to recreate.
Yeah,
that's what people
incentives.
want. So those are the things we try to work on to keep them here. But eventually, some are going to leave.
Yeah,
and some are going to come back. Like I said, there's a lot of people that say, yeah, they want to leave. And then when they're gone, they realize, it's really not that much different. It's just nicer there. One of the other things that we've seen is a lot of businesses now have found, because of the circumstances of the last year and a half, that they don't have to have a brick and mortar store. They can have all their employees work from home.
Yeah.
And the employees are finding, well, if I'm going to work from home, I can work from home and live in an apartment in downtown Los Angeles that costs me $4,500 a month, or I can move out to Lake Havasu and work from there and live in a house that costs me $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
So they're going to move to Havasu. Other people have taken, you know what? Life's too short. I'm going to retire. And I have that vacation home out in Havasu that I've been renting out for the last 10 years. I'm going to go live in it.
Yeah.
So, there's a multitude of different reasons as to why we're having the issues that we have. But one of them is, we are a tourist town and we do cater to the tourist economy.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
If you look at the revenues that the city has been bringing in, we just balanced the budget without raising taxes. And that's the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future. We don't plan on raising taxes.
Yeah.
This year, next year, the year after, it doesn't look like we need to. We just need to live within our means and manage what we have.
Yeah.
So some people are going to come, some people are going to go, some people will leave permanently, some people will come back. That's the reality of life. All we can do is to do everything that we can to make it more inviting for them to come back. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, it'll be their decision as to whether they leave or not leave.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like too that a kind of stemming factor of that is the issue of complacency as well, from
Mm-hmm.
having access to all the different things in Havasu, but then just getting used to it, and then you want to diversify and be like, okay, well maybe like the big city is gonna have more stuff to do and everything, and then you get later on in life you get that feeling of like, okay, maybe Havasu isn't all that bad.
Well, and one of the things that you will find is what doesn't Havasu have that the big city has? Shopping.
Yeah.
If you like to go shopping, we don't have that. But what else don't we have? Traffic, graffiti, gangs. There's a lot of other things that Havasu doesn't have that you don't want that's in the big city.
Yeah.
You can walk down the street here and feel pretty safe.
Mm-hmm.
Now you always want to be aware of your surroundings and your circumstances, but we don't have those big city issues here either.
Yeah, because that was the issue that for the time that I lived in California, and then also too because I lived in Texas for a couple of years in South Dallas, and that's a big difference I see as well. Like the big cities, it's always I come across more issues to where it's kind of probably not safe to be out at times, like walking around because you never know the people, versus a small town here. Because like when I lived in South Dallas, every single night there was gunshots, sirens, stuff like that. But here in Havasu, for example, you're not hearing any of that, and so it's that quietness too.
You don't hear the helicopters circling overhead because they're looking for a suspect.
Yeah.
Do we have crime here? Sure. We have 55,000 people. There is crime here.
Yeah.
We have an outstanding police department. Those men and women over there do a really, really good job. And I've worked with law enforcement agencies all over this country.
Yeah.
We have a good one here. and these people are thoroughly dedicated. And it's interesting working with different law enforcement agencies. Most cities have different, you can live in this town but work in that town, and you're not living in the same town with the people that you're arresting.
Yeah.
In this town, all of our city employees are also our neighbors.
Yeah.
Whether it's the police, the fire, the parks, the public works, whatever it is, they're all our neighbors. So there's an extra incentive for them to do a really good job.
Yeah, because we're all in the same boat.
And we all want the same thing: a great place to live and grow up for our families.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's all your questions?
Yeah, that should be it. That was honestly a lot of really great conversation. I appreciate you coming on too.
Anytime. Yeah. Anytime you want to talk about anything, just give me a call.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we'll get together and I enjoy letting the people know what's going on, and they can get a hold of me at any time. Like I said, my phone number is in the paper every Sunday. It's on the city website, and it's my cell phone. The only time I don't answer it is when I'm doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple text messages now. It's Sunday. It was in the paper this morning. So.
Yeah.
So it happens. But that's what I'm here for. Yeah.
I feel like it too. It's a good way to connect with the community and everything, kind of get more in route and everything.
Oh, absolutely. And I hope a lot of people watch and learn a little bit about what's happening in Lake Havasu City.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate you having on. It was a great opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. And then for all you guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want to keep watching, learn more, if you're new here, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell. And, let's get on this. Let's change the world, people. But again, thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.